We're live?
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys! Welcome to YIY Soul Conversations. This is our first episode, so bear with us with any little technical glitches or anything, and know that we are in my home, and I do have a good family, so if you see either one of our kids running around or dogs, know that we're home, and we're happy to have you here with us, and I'm here with my very close friend, Caroline. Hello! My love. So Caroline and I attended yoga teacher training 5 years ago. Was it 5? Yeah. I think it was about 5 years ago. 2015, right? Yeah. And, it's been a journey for us, and our relationship has just grown, and she's truly my sister. And Caroline, it's such an honor to have you as my first guest because your creativity, your activism, your strength, and your intellect truly inspires me. So to have the opportunity to share you and your gifts with everyone else is just like a huge and true honor.
Man, you cannot have a conversation and about to cry at the same time.
Like everybody needs to know you're the bomb.com.
I love you.
Man,
I feel the same way.
I don't think, when I decided just to start You're in Yogi, everyone like Caroline was a huge contributor to the brand. You're in Yogi is a brand and a lifestyle. And, Caroline, she saw and she felt the vision, even when I didn't feel like I had the creativity or the words, you did. And I just love you, and I'm just so excited to share you with everyone.
I love you too. And I truly feel the same way. Like, you make me so proud. And everybody that I encounter, even last night when I was teaching, I had a student ask about mentoring, and I'm like, yes, I'm happy to mentor you too, but I need you to know my sister Libby. You also need to be mentored by her because she is incredible, and she is just you embody so many things that I didn't see in myself, and it's almost like you awakened those things in me. So I'm so glad that our paths crossed.
It's so crazy, and I say it. I think Pat, her and I were talking, and I'm like, that's what it is. When you have these divine connections, I think it's normally this beautiful exchange of giving and receiving, and it's so natural, right? It's so genuine, and I think it was instant. Like I don't think I ever even said this to you. I remember the first day after yoga teacher training, and you came up to me, and I'm really shy. You came up to me, what did you think? And I was like, why does she want to be my friend?
Wait, can we be real first of all?
It was just such a scary, but the way you welcomed me, and it was just so natural for you to do that. And I remember another time when I kind of had this little breakdown, and you was the first person to be in the bathroom. You was like, screw that shit. But these are moments that we had that I never told you what those moments truly meant for me. And it helped me open up and own my truth as well. You know what I mean? Because when I talk about your strength, you always had that. I don't care. I'm gonna do it. I don't care what you said. I'm gonna do it my way. And I was always the person well, the instructions didn't say do it that way. So your creativity, it's hard to find the right words.
I feel, thank you. And I feel like it was just meant for us to connect because, and I like you, I feel like I've shared this with other people, but may not have necessarily shared it with you. But you were honestly my first Black female yogi friend.
Yep.
And I think that's why I was like I remember walking into the YTC that morning, and I got up super early, which is not me, and like before work. And I was like ready, and then something happened, and I was like flying in to get there. I think I had to make sure like Cam was straight or something. Regardless, when I got there, I was frazzled. And you were the first person that I made eye contact with. And I had no idea you was going to be in yoga teacher training with us. And I just remember saying like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Because like, to be honest, like so much, I can't speak for everyone, but as a Black woman, especially like a Black woman practicing here in Memphis and in the South in general, like it can be a really lonely journey. Yeah. So I mean, seeing you, like I automatically felt like God told me to look that way for a specific reason. So by the end of class, I'm like, oh, this is my sister.
We got this.
Right, like we can keep each other. Like, and then I found out you were from Jersey. I'm like, oh, it's all over. It's all over the East Coast. Like, this is it.
Yeah. Oh wow. So I have to ask.
We were live on Instagram and now I can't find it. And Facebook is saying we have 9 minutes to go live. So I think something's going on, but it's not.
Are we on YouTube?
Yeah, I wonder. So is the screen saying that we're live?
It says we're live, but I don't know where we're live to. It also says I think we're being watched by nobody. So I think we might just be live to YouTube.
Okay. Or I wonder. So if we are live somewhere and if we are recording, just know that we are working through this, and you have the honor to work through it with us. Because what I think it may be doing, it may be recording, and then it may go out after.
I hope so. Okay. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Test run.
I mean,
I'll keep checking the too and see if something happens.
Yeah, and then share it later because this is like super good. So if it isn't and you're missing out, dear universe, sorry.
Right. I'm happy.
So Caroline, I have to. You're a huge music head. What's on your playlist and why?
Yo, like, I actually thought about this the other day, and I definitely don't want to make this conversation about the pandemic because I'm tired. But at the same time, I feel like being at home and being in this space has almost like, it's put me in a different place in terms of what I listen to. Because I was definitely, before, I had a good mix of like my favorites that were like, 90s hip hop and R&B and whatever else, and jazz, and like a lot of current music. And I found myself over these past 6 months, I guess, at home, pandemic and everything else that's happening, especially, in the Black community, I found myself going back and listening to like Marvin Gaye and listening to James Brown and listening to even like classic Afro beats and Afro jazz. And I've just kind of used music as a way over these past several months to like come back home to us, and not necessarily like I want to be on top of like whoever's album is dropping this Friday. Like I don't care. I could not tell you whose album came out today, but I know that my playlist that I've been listening to probably span a good like 50 years. Yeah. And the playlist that I made for my class last night. My playlists that I play in class are like what I'm listening to. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily like a part of a theme. But the playlist that I made last night, or for my class last night, I've been vibing to for like a few days now. And it's like, there's a little bit of African jazz, there's sounds of Blackness and Ladysmith Black Mambazo and Don Penn, because, I need my reggae in there, and Bob Marley, and just like anything that feels like it's nourishing my soul. And, you know, even beyond like the playlist that I've been kind of vibing out to, that I teach to, I kind of have just been like relying on that connection that we have with music that was speaking to where we were at the time, which I think is why I've been gravitating toward like some of those older tracks, because that's when we as a people were really going through something, and our music had such a focus and a message, and it was such a source of empowerment. And don't get me wrong, like, you know, our generation is still doing that now, but the music, it just hit different. Like, listening to Marvin Gaye, listening to really anyone who was using their music to communicate with us, I feel like it still resonates now as what 5-6 decades old. So that's what I've been listening to lately.
Are you sharing your playlist?
Yes. So I think all of my recent playlists are public on Spotify. I don't know if the one from yesterday is, but I will share it
to me.
Because the show was dope. Like, I was teaching yesterday, and I'm like, all right. Like, I was just kind of vibing. Like, I had fun with yesterday's playlist, that's for sure.
Man, I remember we were at Lifetime, and I say, you know, like, I really don't teach like hip hop yoga because I think I will be dancing more than I'm teaching. And I remember one evening, man, I don't know what song you put on, but I started like winding and like I'm in the back row on my mat doing like
I love it. I feel like that's the point. Like, our yoga practices can be so rigid. Yeah, music is so transformative. Like,
and you just feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it in a whole other way.
And listen, you are.
And what I love about it too is sometimes it provokes certain emotions. And I know, like, typically they say, no, you don't play music because you don't want to provoke those emotions. But I think at that time, maybe that's the emotion we need to be working with. Mm-hmm. And so I love that, you know, whether it's something that reaches back to my youth, you know, if it's a hip hop, whatever it is, I'm like, I needed that. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know I needed it, but I needed that. Yeah.
I'm glad it connects. I mean, I feel like music and yoga, this is like one of those topics that has been taboo for so long. It's become trendy now. I mean, like, you know, you got whole brands and chains of studios that have built themselves around other people's music, but we won't talk about that. But my point is that, you know, now it's more acceptable, whereas even a few years ago, like, you know,
it was just like, wait, you can't play that. You can't never now.
You know, hip hop doesn't belong in the yoga studio. And I took an online class that was maybe just 4 or 5 months ago, and the teacher said that, and I'm like, but you were teaching, like, this music is in your class, but you're saying it doesn't belong here. So I'm confused. Right. Like, are you saying that you put this track on here because you know that it's a trend and you're truly not teaching from an authentic place? Yeah. Cool. Thanks for acknowledging that. But for me, it's authentic. Yeah. Like, and I couldn't teach otherwise.
And I love that because I remember when we were in yoga teacher training, our teacher, Amy Morris, when we were talking about playlists, Amy said, your playlist, and I hope I'm quoting you right, Amy, is for you.
Right.
You know, your playlist, when you create it, it's music that you want to listen to. And when she said that, that resonated because it's difficult to create a playlist based on just a class. You don't know who's going to walk into that class. You know what I mean? Like, but I love that. And like you said, it's all authentic to you. And I feel it when I'm in your class. And you can tell when it's true to a teacher because when they're teaching, then you get a different vibe from them. It's a different type of flow.
Yeah.
If it is authentic.
I agree. And I remember when Amy said that, it really resonated with me because, you know, we'd all been practicing for a while, but obviously the teaching game was new to us. So I know how I practiced at home, even when I was practicing Ashtanga at home, which you don't traditionally practice music. I'm like, I know how I feel when, you know, I hear a certain song. It just changes how I experience my body. I'm still breathing and I'm still connected with my breath, but it's different. And when she said that, I was like, okay, this kind of affirms that like other people can have this experience too. Like we don't need to shield people from the fact that music can be a part of your yoga. And what I found that was also affirming for me as a teacher who was trying to like step out on a limb and teach differently was that one of my experiences, or I guess my overall experience with yoga for a long time, was that I was one of just a few people, Black people or people of color in the studio. Yeah. And when I would like talk to other people, like tell them like, oh, you need to come to yoga, they'd be like, like I'm not trying to come in there and like sit in meditation and listen to flutes. And I'm like, that's not what it has to be. And when I started just teaching the way that I practiced at home, I noticed that like some of those very same people were starting to come to yoga, and like more of us felt welcome and included. And I'm like, well, this is it. Like, if it's not for everybody else who was used to hearing a certain type of music, I don't have to be your teacher. And that's another thing that Annie said. Yes. I am not everyone's teacher. Cool.
You have to own that.
Right. And that's hard.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with it now.
Yeah.
It was not easy getting there, but I'm fine with it now.
Yeah. Because, that's also that people pleasing, right? You get caught up in that. And it's like, I think personally, that's one of the things that when we closed the studio space, I was able to let go. Like this feeling of having to people please, But I think even as teachers, because you want your students to come. You want to, right. But then it's like really owning that I'm not everybody's teacher, right. And that's okay.
It is. And I can't tell you how proud it makes me that you owned a physical space for so long. But a part of that longevity was that you truly owned the space. Like you were the owner of that space. Who gives a shit if other people didn't like it? Yeah. Like this was your inner yogi that was truly created by Libby and it's you didn't put yourself in a situation where you had to people please, and that is powerful when you can truly be your own boss. And I know that crosses over more into the business of yoga, but it's also like a very different connection with yourself. I know there were a lot of times when I was teaching at other spaces outside of your inner yogi. I always felt like we were at home at your inner yogi, but teaching in other spaces, I would have like all these students that were coming to me and saying, thank you for X, Y, and Z music or whatever. But there would be like one student who wouldn't come to me. They would go to like the manager or corporate and be like, wow, I didn't like the music that was being played. Or somebody actually called my playlist jungle music one time. And I was, for real. And it was a complaint to a higher up. And the higher up asked me, like, could you just play like a little bit less hip hop or R&B? And I'm like, if I did that, I don't know that I would be like truly teaching authentically. I truly think it would like show in the way that I teach. It wouldn't be about the music. And that was a hard thing for me to say. But at the same time, I'm going back and thinking to all the students who had come to me over the years and said like, hey, I finally felt like I could be here and present in the space. I feel like you were holding space with us with the environment that you were creating. So I'm like, I'm going to let one person who said something that was honestly offensive as hell change that? That's crazy. So I'm so proud of you. I think you let go of the people pleasing a long time ago. I truly do. I think you didn't let go of that label.
Yeah, because it's like, when you're in yogi, it was our space, right? I feel like because I knew, for one, I don't like people putting their expectations onto me, right?
And you've always been that way. You didn't just get
right. It's like you expect something I'm not right. And so I knew that's what I wanted your inner yogi to be. That I wanted your inner yogi to be the space that the teachers and the students can just be themselves and be accepted for who they are. Because within the yoga community, we put people in boxes. Okay, are you a Ashtanga yoga? Right. Are you a hippie?
Are you a beginner?
Are you a beginner? Are you advanced? It's like, no, come as you are. It's cool. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think for me, the people pleasing was like right now. Right now, I just teach flow and mindfulness, right? And before I'm trying to call my class this, I'm trying to call it, and I think it's like trying to get in that box of structuring my class in a certain way so that certain people can say, and I'm like, I don't want to do that no more.
Right.
Like, I just want to teach flow and mindfulness, and that's going to be a little bit of meditation, a little bit of breath. I mean, it's really like a flow class, but it's like, you know, we put a whole lot of mindfulness in this too, right? And that just felt so freeing. That little thing, but I know it's probably just, it's all psychological, but I don't think my class is really any different than what they talk about.
But I think like when you change when you're teaching from up here versus teaching from here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I feel like coming out of teacher training, all of us were teaching from up here. And it just stuck with us it stuck with us for so long. And like I know teaching in like a corporate run studio environment, of course, it's a very cerebral thing because you have to like remember their rules and their style and their formats. Being a business owner, you know, you're constantly thinking of like, okay, how do I marry like what I want to teach versus what's going to bring people into the studio? So yeah, there's a lot of thinking involved, but I think when we can like bring some of that mindfulness into our own space and just be like, you know what, I'm going to move this down a little bit and I'm just going to go with what feels right. It's just so much better. And it's no longer about the numbers and the people in front of you.
Yeah. Oh my God. So why yoga? What does yoga mean to you? I mean, like, I know like we have like our textbook definition and we have, but like in your soul, like what does yoga mean for Caroline?
Man, it's, you know, my definition is actually evolving because I feel like for so long I turned to yoga, even like when I first started practicing or getting back into my practice several years ago, I wanted yoga to fix things in me that I thought were broken. So like yoga was supposed to be my cure-all. It was supposed to be like my Band-Aid to like cover up the wound.
Yeah.
I won't even say truly heal the wound. Because I thought, just like covering up. The more I go to yoga, the more I'll feel better. And like there was just a gap. And the gap existed, and even though I got deeper into my practice and I got deeper into living my yoga, sometimes I felt like that gap was widening, and it's because I was losing my connection with it for so long. I felt like yoga was something that I just had to do. And as much as it was a part of my life, it had become that part of my life that's just like, you know, you wake up, you eat, you brush your teeth, you do your yoga, you meditate, you move on. And I think having to slow down over these past several months.
So when you say you felt like something you had to do, was it because you were a teacher or was it just because that's what you were doing and you just had to make
both. Because on the one hand, I knew that yoga was very therapeutic for me. But because I knew that it had brought about some changes in my life, I was almost like dependent on it.
Yeah.
So I felt, and even there are far worse things to be dependent on, don't get me wrong. But I also felt like, you know, if I don't do my meditation today, if I don't practice asana today, I'm gonna be a bad yogi. I'm gonna go back into that bad headspace, that bad physical space, like the whole world's gonna fall apart. So I have to do this. Like there was just a lot of rigidity in my thinking. And then with teaching, which you asked about, you know, we're all taught that if you're not on your mat or if you're not meditating, whatever it is that you're teaching, because obviously there's more than one way to practice yoga, but whatever it is that you're teaching, you need to be practicing. And I found that sometimes instead of letting myself fall off, which I don't think I think we as Americans look at falling off in a really negative light, when sometimes that's just kind of like where life is, right? Yeah. Like, and instead of letting myself experience it, nope, not practice today. Right, exactly. And again, there was so much rigidity in my thinking, And I think, especially during these past 6 months at home, but really everything had just kind of come more so into laser focus that was kind of evolving in my life over the past few years. I realized that letting go of that rigidity and truly just being okay with, if I'm not on my mat today, look at all the other 7 ways I can still be practicing yoga. Or, if my meditation today is only a few minutes, but I hit that transcendent state where I'm just like almost in between worlds. Yeah. That's better than sitting there for 60 minutes and like peeking at my watch like, is it done yet? I'm done yet? And like letting go of that. So for me, I think right now, yoga means for me letting go. Yeah. And before, it was almost the opposite. The irony is that, of course, yoga is the opposite. But it was almost like yoga meant that I had to like hold on to something. Like I was holding on to this practice for so long. And, letting go of that rigidity has brought me closer to yoga. Studying other forms of yoga, like Kemetic Yoga, has like changed the game for me. So, it's just kind of beautiful that when you let go, things fall into place as they should versus you like trying to take these pieces and put them in the order that you think they should be in.
Just letting the universe.
Yeah, that's hard to put there.
I have control.
We're going to do it like this. And forcing these round pegs into the square holes. Like, that's always me.
So 2 questions. One, I love it when you was like, other ways I can practice. How else are you practicing yoga off your mat? And I want to dive into this Kemetic Yoga.
Okay. So my other ways, asana, like the physical postures and meditation were always my go-tos. Honestly, for a long time, it was just asana. It was just moving my body. My meditation has become a more dependable part of my practice for me, and that has kind of led to me awakening other practices in yoga. So I just kind of started really like trying to align my actions and inactions to the yamas and niyamas. Yeah. And with more intention than before. I think before, I was aware of them, I observed them, but I wasn't necessarily like practicing them in very deliberate ways. Yeah. And I think now meditation has led me to that, especially when it comes to self-study. And I feel like, if anything, 365 days a year, my yoga is self-study, even if there's no yoga mat or meditation cushion involved. And whether that comes in the form of reading, whether that comes in the form of not even in a meditative state, but sitting with myself and just kind of like observing like what's happening right now. Yeah. Like creating like a little bit of space between this moment and the next moment. That's where a lot of self-study happens for me, because I realized that like life had been moving at such a crazy pace for so long that there wasn't that space, and I found myself just in react mode all the time. So not being in react mode is a part of that journey of self-study, or I guess a result of that journey of self-study. Yeah. And that's what transformed me on and off the mat too. So,
it's so funny. Like, I realized that, well, personally for me, one of the ways recently, like like everyone, and I was doing my meditation, and then I started noticing like some mornings, instead of actually sitting to meditate, man, like I cook. Mm-hmm. And like I'll be in like this meditative state, but like I'm creating, like, and I was just like, okay, this is living your yoga, right? Like it doesn't have to be textbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And cooking is such a good example, because there are so many ways that we can be like at one with ourselves in what we are doing in the moment, and that's meditation. Yeah. And I feel like cooking for me too is that when I'm not cooking at the end of the day and rushing and trying to make sure that Kim's doing his homework and like Chris is good and I'm not trying to check all these boxes, but when I'm just in the kitchen and like preparing a meal with love, that is
It's just like so.
it's so fulfilling.
Yes. Oh my God.
I feel you. And I love that you started your blog, your vegan blog with all your recipes. Every time I come across anything new that's like interesting and like out of the box and not just your typical vegan recipe, I want to Libby's try this. I need somebody to test it for me that knows what they're doing before I get in here and jack it up and never come back to the recipe.
Like,
Right.
Oh, it's so crazy how you said, how everything just evolves, and it's like we get these little nuggets when we let go, and of course, like in classes in classes and things, like we say, breathe, let go, inhale, exhale, but it's always easier said than done, right? But you get this magic when you actually come to a space of connecting with that, whatever that thing is for you, and then being able to let that go too. Because it's like we can get fixated on like, man, when I did this, it's kind of like what you were saying, before. It's like, okay, I have to continue my asana and my meditation. If not, I'm gonna fall off. But it's like when we let go, it's like, that's what I'm supposed to do. Like that non-attachment. You
taking the words out of my mouth. Non-attachment, contentment.
Yes.
Because we're truly content with ourselves in the moment, regardless of what has led us to that moment, regardless of what we did or did not do. And that is one of the ways that, again, going back to really trying to reflect on the yamas and the niyamas and really try to see how I can bring these into my daily practice. Non-attachment and contentment. Huge.
And so with Kemetic Yoga, let's pour into that a little bit. So I'm curious. So as we talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, and is it in line? Because I know yoga started, right?
Yes. So yoga, like everything, started. Yoga started in Africa, Northeast Africa, Egypt. And to answer your question about like the 8 limbs of yoga, of course, like all of that was documented as a spiritual, physical, everything that you can think of, everything that you relate to yoga as we know it in the Western world was all documented in ancient Egypt well before it was documented in the text that we studied, in the Yoga Sutras and the Hatha Yoga Pratipika. I think what's been so transformative to me is like, I know growing up, I was always told like everything came out of Africa. I'm like, okay, man, I want my proof now. Like, I believe it. I just need you to show me. And going through Kemetic Yoga teacher training, because I still felt like that applied to yoga, but I'm like, I just need. So the teacher training has been life-changing for me because it's making me think in a different way. So there are, again, all the principles. There's dietary purification. There's abstaining from, certain things that don't nourish you physically, mentally, spiritually, and otherwise. But beyond that, there are so many parallels that we see with yoga, Indian yoga, if that's just a way to group it all together, or Western yoga. So many parallels that we see in the modern way that it's practiced that really come from Kemetic Yoga. So thinking about, for example, what's the one yoga pose that may have been referenced in the Yoga Sutras?
I'm like, good with pop quizzes.
Exactly. That's the point. Is that the Yoga Sutras are one of those like foundational texts, right? Yeah. And like we talk about the Yoga Sutras so much in teacher training, and just we're good yogis if we can tell you like what Yoga Sutra is, ease and steadiness and all that, right? The only pose in there is lotus pose. And the whole purpose of practicing lotus, that's your meditation pose.
Yeah, it's just to open your body up and to...
Exactly. So, and even the concept of lotus, Upper Egypt was known as lotus. Lower Egypt was known as papyrus. The union of the two lands, Smai-Ta, S-M-A-I, Ta, T-A, union of the two lands, the union of opposites is what? Yoga. So, I mean, all of these concepts of being able to trace them back has just been like light bulbs going off left and right. And I think even with the postures, which were, again, what brought me to yoga, what's been so incredible about that is, you know, there's so much emphasis on posture practice in the 21st/20th century.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, you know, all the forms of yoga that we've studied, it really wasn't until the 20th century, so like, you know, the 1900s, arguably like the 1800s, where you start seeing like postures outside of lotus practice or lotus pose. There's a reason for that. In Kemetic Yoga, cloud pose is literally on the walls of a temple from over 10,000 years ago. Yeah. And even, you know, the traditional lotus pose with your heels and your hip creases was depicted on the walls of temples and tombs in ancient Egypt. These poses are in the hieroglyphs. There are poses that show, like the pose of Asar is the pose of rebirth. And for us to be able, and some of these poses are uniquely Kemetic, like they weren't translated into, so like everything, you know, with the diaspora, basically what I've learned is that, of course, yoga started in Egypt. It was practiced by the priests and priestesses, and then it was practiced by, you know, the young people who were studying engineering, architecture, and everything that required a lot of mental discipline. So in order for them to be deemed ready to study those things, they had to first master mind, body, and spirit. Right, exactly. So they were practicing yoga in all of its forms, and all of the 8 limbs. As people migrated up and out of Africa, there were the Dravidians. They were what was known as the Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley, India, you know, moving into Southeast Asia. And they engaged in these practices too, and over the years they developed them, and they were really using them again for mental and spiritual purposes, believing that instead of us trying to get closer to God, which is what we hear so much, is trying to tap within. But there still wasn't a lot of emphasis on postures at that time, because connecting with the God within was like the true meaning, the true practice back then. Whereas in ancient Egypt, you know, these postures were also a gateway to that. It wasn't about like, you know, the flexibility and the muscles and, you know, finding the strength to get yourself up and down or handstand. It was really about drawing strength from those poses, drawing inner strength. So it's been incredible, especially because, you know, I see where these poses, like I use cloud pose as an example because I love Ashtanga, and when I saw cloud pose, I was like, what? Of course. But, and for anybody that's not familiar with the poses, cloud pose is the one where you're laying on your back, your feet are up and over your head. It's an Ashtanga pose, but it was also the temples in ancient Egypt. But seeing that, and then seeing that there were poses that I would have never even thought were a part of this practice, but they're poses that I had like seen in random history books. I'm like, that's where this was coming from. This is what they were doing. This is incredible. And while I think when we were in teacher training, I had no idea Kemetic Yoga existed. It's never thought of, right? It's never talked about, nothing. You know, we learned that yoga is only 5,000 years old, 5,000-ish, when it's a lot older. But somewhere between teacher training and the past year or so, I learned that Kemetic Yoga existed, and I started just kind of practicing online with various people. I eventually kind of just made this commitment, like at some point I'm going to go through this teacher training. Well, doing it now has been incredibly relevant because of everything that is going on in the world, and especially everything that is, you know, there's the COVID-19 pandemic, but then there's also an ongoing, 400 plus year pandemic of social injustice, particularly against Black and brown people. So this training, it has so much relevance because this practice is used to heal trauma, and especially trauma that is unique to our experience as Black people.
I just got a sharp pain in my heart when you said that.
Yeah, it's real, and we feel it, psychosomatically. Like it's not something that I could really put into words. Like the many connections and reactions that I've had, just like that when my teacher's name is Yusir. When Master Yusir was just kind of putting things into context, I was like, it's almost like this paralyzing thing. Again, I can't put it into words, but having that context with yoga, and then not only acknowledging where we are as a people and what we've been through, but that this system can heal us and has healed our ancestors for thousands of years. It's just incredible.
And you're teaching every Thursday for how long is the series? At 6 p.m.
It says at 6:30 in the River Garden. It's just the next 2 Thursdays in September. And then, if the weather holds out, because we can never predict the fall Olympics, if the weather holds out, and if schedule permits, hopefully we'll add a few more. And it's definitely something that I want to keep teaching and keep teaching it in this way. I love the pay what you can model, because I feel like this practice needs to, especially Kemetic, needs to be the most accessible possible. So we're doing it without the intimidation of a studio, without people having to feel a certain way, if they can't pay however much money. I sent my email to the people that registered yesterday. I'm like, I'm not walking around with a collection plate. If you don't feel so inclined to drop a dime to me, I hope that you have gotten your practice in. I hope that this practice has been as transformative for you as it has been for me and the other, I think there's 120 of us in that teacher training. Yeah. So it's awesome.
Wow. How long is the training?
So it comes in modules. So this first one, what was that, 30-something hour training? How training goes, lab sessions and self-study, and you have to do your practice and all that good stuff. There's another module that is going to start in October, and it's about bringing the practice to kids. But there's a lot of flexibility in how we can complete this. So you can keep doing the live modules, which is what I had done for this last one. You can go through it. You can go through each of the live modules. You can select the live modules, but continue through just the digital version of it, which I need that live interaction. Yeah, I'd rather have the human interaction, but can't do that right now. Or what I originally wanted to do, he does an intensive in Egypt.
Ooh,
right.
Is it scheduled yet?
I don't know that there might be one scheduled for 2021.
Because I know we talked about Atlanta, and that's the one in person.
Yeah,
and I think you mentioned the Egypt one.
Yeah, I know there was one scheduled for this year. I know he did a retreat in Jamaica, and that
was the one that you were talking about. Yeah. But hey, if anybody want to go to Egypt with us, we can set that up. Do some love offering. Let's make this happen.
And I still want to go through the one in Egypt. I'm I want the training now just because I need this in my life. But I still want to go through the whole thing in person, and I'm determined that I'm going to do that training in Egypt. So,
look, I'm down.
Right, we're going to put it out in the universe.
However, we're going to make this work.
Right.
Oh, man. So, I know we talked as well. My mind, so much. Now I know you and I talked about we're going to do some type of Kemetic class, something on YIY, right?
Yeah.
So if get downtown the next 2 Thursdays,
but it will be online too.
But we're going to try to work it out, and we'll get it on YIY as well. What change are you looking forward to?
I feel like I can't answer that in a linear way, only because one of the things that I've learned about myself this year is that no matter how I feel like I'm trying to prepare for change, I suck at it. I can't, and I suck at it. And like I always want to like plan and like tell myself like if I've gone through all of these steps, then when this change does come, I'll be fine. And inevitably, I'm fine regardless. But the journey isn't always easy, and inevitably we experience more than one change at one time. Right?
I mean, nothing else is true for that. It's just
Right. So I mean, like, it's hard to say, but how I can answer that question is that I'm looking forward to whatever change comes. Even this summer, like, we've shared what was happening in our lives over the summer. It's been a hell of a summer. But like the one change that I was looking forward to ended up being a nightmare.
Never the way you expect it. It's never, and it's just like, man. Yeah. And that's the true challenge. It's not necessarily that element, the actual thing that you want to change, but it's adjusting to the unexpected.
Yep. And I think like the more we go through just in this like human experience while we have these bodies that we're in, the more if we truly like listen and learn from ourselves, whatever change we end up facing, we end up being able to navigate in the future with a little bit more grace.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the lessons this year has taught me, because again, like multiple changes at one time. We're all experiencing the same change with the pandemic changing life, but then we also have like life happening too.
Yes.
And it's just, I've been talking about this with my therapist. I'm like, why can't I get better at this? And she's like, first of all, I don't know that you're not getting better at it. I think you're just having this expectation that it's just going to be so much easier once you get better at it. And it doesn't get easier.
I think the lesson is always, because it seems like it really happens when we're like super excited about it, and it's like you're not supposed to have any expectations.
Right.
You're too hyper over there.
Not attachment to outcomes.
Yes, it's like better. And then I think it's like you said, it's because I remember I went through that, like this thing of vulnerability, right? I'm like, man, all right, I was vulnerable, it was difficult, but I got through it. Okay, I don't have to be vulnerable no more.
Right.
It's like, no, that's not it. It's like over and over again it comes, and it's bigger obstacles, but it's like we have to remember, like you're supposed to be open, not adjustment, not attachment. No expectations.
And even the word that you said, remember. So in Kemetic, in one of my classes over the past couple of weeks, one of the teacher training sessions, Master Yasir broke down the word remember. And he was like, so Asar, who is one of the gods, was dismembered. He was chopped into 14 pieces. And his wife, Aset, had to put him back together. And not necessarily in the same way, but he had to get remembered. All those pieces had to come back together in some way, shape, or form to make him whole again. And whole looks different. And I think that is something that like was another one of those aha moments for me, because I'm like, I always like heard, lessons are repeated until they are learned. Lessons are repeated. So I'm like, well, damn, how many times do I have to learn this? And when he put it that way, and you reminded me of that, the word remember, it's not necessarily like you learn this lesson, you put the pieces back together in the same order, and then you're good.
Yeah. You
really truly have to look at the way that things are coming together in your life. And you have to look at like the journey that got you there. And it might not even be the same exact lesson, but if you are absorbing and you are really truly looking for the message, it's going to change you differently, even though it looks like it's the same lesson. Your remembrance of what the past experience was doesn't mean that you're going to come out the same way that you came out the last time. And it was so, I can't articulate it in a way that does it justice, but that was just so poignant to me at the time. We keep expecting, like, I've been through this before, so I'll come out the same way.
Yeah, it's like, no.
It's different. It's different each time. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that if we come out differently, we'll come out worse. Yeah. It's just for a different purpose.
There is no right or wrong.
Right.
Right.
Like, it's hard, though.
So, I asked you, we're getting to a closing point. I know, right? It just flew.
It did.
And I asked you to bring a closing offering. What's your closing offering?
My closing offering is actually a quote that I have been sitting with for a while. It's actually a whole book that I bought, y'all, but this won't be reading Rainbow. I'm not going to read the whole book. But y'all, this book is probably a little tattered now because I've turned to it so many times. It's got this beautiful T ring around it, but back and forth to it so many times. But it is called Gather by Octavia Rahim, who you know is the owner of Sacred Chill. Yes. A phenomenal human being. And this book, in 100 pages, maybe not even that many. Oh my goodness. So there are a few different things in this book, and you can see how many dog years there are, like how many pages that I've bent, because I need to come back to these things. But it offered me like so many nuggets to really contemplate. And like I went through this book and I would read it like 2 pages at a time and just sit with it. So there's one quote that has really kind of been a source of guidance for me to really check in with myself that I would like to share. And then I would like to share a little passage. And then that's going to be my offering. So the quote that I've been considering so much was, how much longer will you be too busy to fully enter into your own life? Listen, like, how many conversations have we had with each other, with our loved ones, where we're like, I really want to do this, and I know you make time. Everybody says you make time for what's important to you, but at the end of the day,
I'm this, I'm working, I'm that. Yeah.
All these hats, and it's still only 24 hours in a day. But this made me think differently. Octavia is a business owner. Octavia talks about her motherhood journey. She also talked about how much of her life and the experiences of the mothers before her, she brought into her own journey, and how that set expectations that weren't necessarily hers. Yeah. And all of that plays into, this feeling of needing to do all of these things, this feeling of busyness, and not necessarily fulfilling what you know is, or what you may think is your destiny. Yeah. I mean, who's to say that destiny is just one thing for us? Yeah. But not being able, or not feeling like we have that space to truly explore what that is so confining. And this is one thing that I've been sitting with a lot over the past several months. How much longer will you be too busy to fully enter into your own life? Now, the passage that followed that, there's actually 2. I think in the interest of time, I have bookmarked 2, but maybe we'll bring another one for the next time. We got 5 minutes? Okay, so the other passage that I've been sitting with, and this one was one that I came across right before I learned about the Kemetic training taking place online. She says, when I nourish and take care of my body, I connect to the wisdom, power, courage, and love of my ancestors. And it really put into focus that, we're hearing a lot about self-care and how self-care, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big proponent of self-care. Candace and I love self-care. I'm not saying self-care doesn't exist or have its place, but I think another thing that has come into focus, particularly this year, is how self-care feeds collective care. And not just radiating it back out into the universe, but drawing in from those who came before us. And, putting self-care in the context of I nourish myself, I can give back to myself, I can give back to others, but it is those who came before me who are actually like fueling and feeding into me. And as long as I am making time for myself, as long as I'm getting rid of that busyness, I am honoring what they went through for me to even be here. And I am drawing from their strength and all the things that they did and were not able to accomplish. Like, that is where my energy comes from. And if I'm spending all this time just checking off boxes, I'm not preserving that energy that I'm so blessed to have been given from those who came before me. So that is the quote. And then the passage that follows that is, what allowed my ancestors to continue? What allowed them to hold on? What kept them alive? Despite everything that was set up against their humanity and survival, what allowed them to hold on so that I could exist, so that I could be here. And then she talks about how she kept an ancestral altar. She talks about empowered wisdom yoga nidra and how that deepened her practice. She says, I've come into be simple and profound awareness that my body holds the heart of my ancestors. My blood is made of their blood. My body carries their reverent limbs. My eyes are deep portals into theirs. My tongue carries their words, songs, prayers, and chants forward. My breath connects me to the place to which they have returned. What I do to my body, I do to my ancestors and to the future. And then she talks about reclaiming the inherent value in her Black and woman body, confronting messages, systems, and societal norms that tell me I am not worthy of my own care or love. It requires me to be deeply compassionate with myself as I come up against the ways that I've internalized those negative messages. And then shares what actively nourishing herself looks like. And she mentions cooking class. So that is my offering. Y'all, please support it.
Yes.
The lovely Octavia Rahim. You can order this book. I think she's self-published. Yeah, it's on Amazon. It gets here quickly. It's a quick read, but please don't read it quickly because she drops so many gems that you just need to sit with.
I'm going to get mine. Oh my God.
I got you. I owe you a birthday present.
Everybody, thank y'all so much for being here with us as we are. We are truly grateful, sending you all love and gratitude. Again, my sister, Caroline Collins. See you guys later.
Thanks, guys.